In the history of World War II, there are many examples of heroism demonstrated by individuals in the most challenging circumstances. However, the name of Nancy Wake, an Australian who became one of the most famous and fearless members of the resistance, deserves particular attention. Her life before the war and her actions during the Nazi occupation of France serve as a powerful example of how human resilience, determination, and resourcefulness can change the course of events. The time when Nancy entered the fight against the Nazis was a period when humanity had already confronted the largest conflict in its history. Nancy Wake was born on the 30th of August, 1912, in New Zealand. But at a young age, her family moved to Australia. Before the outbreak of World War II, she had already encountered the harsh realities of life in various countries, working in different sectors. As a young woman, she was determined to achieve independence, traveling the world and gaining invaluable life experience that would later prove useful in the most unexpected circumstances. Her life in Paris in the 1930s was a clear reflection of her pursuit of freedom and independence. During this time, Nancy began working as a journalist, which allowed her not only to meet many people, but also to gain a deeper understanding of the political situation in Europe. After France was occupied by the Nazis in 1940, Nancy's life took a dramatic turn. She was already at the heart of the events that led to the country's occupation. She could not remain indifferent to what was unfolding around her. The Nazi army invaded France in May 1940. This became a pivotal moment in her life, one that made her reflect on what she could do to help fight this evil. It was at this point that Nancy, like many others, realized that merely being an observer would not suffice. The decision to join the resistance came against the growing threat posed by the Nazis. Initially, she took part in organizing aid for French refugees, but as time went on, it became clear that her role in the resistance had to be much more active. Nancy began helping British and French agents who were trying to hide in Paris and organize a spy network. Soon she found herself among those who were not just offering help, but who were willing to take personal action, risking their lives to fight the Nazis. After Nancy Wake joined the resistance, she quickly established herself as an outstanding agent with incredible bravery and resourcefulness. France was deep in the midst of war, and under the Nazi occupation, it had become a place of intense partisan combat, sabotage, and secret operations. In this environment, Nancy found herself at the center of events that, in many ways, would alter the course of the conflict. She understood that her actions needed to be decisive and successful, as many lives and the overall success of the struggle depended on them. On the 12th of April 1943, Nancy and her comrades in the French resistance were tasked with a significant mission: the destruction of a strategically important bridge over the Dordogne River, a key German supply route. This bridge was crucial for transporting troops, supplies, and military vehicles for the Nazis. The objective was clear: its destruction could severely disrupt German operations in the area. The operation was meticulously planned, with Nancy taking a central role. She was not only responsible for organizing the attack, but also for ensuring the careful placement of explosives. For her, this was an intense test of both courage and precision. The group knew the risks. Nazi patrols frequently scouted the area, and any mistake could expose them to immediate danger. Nancy meticulously prepared her team for the task. They moved through forests and hills by night, avoiding enemy patrols, staying hidden from view. They knew the exact positions of German troops and the best routes to take. Using the cover of darkness, they set the explosives on the bridge's critical supports. They worked quickly and efficiently, knowing the clock was ticking. Once the charges were set, they retreated to a safe distance. Moments later, the bridge erupted in a massive explosion, signaling the successful completion of the mission. The Nazi forces were severely disrupted, as their transportation route was destroyed. and their supply lines were left vulnerable. After the operation, Nancy and her team withdrew into the forests for safety. The sabotage was a significant blow to the Germans in the region, but it also led to brutal retaliation. The Nazis launched heavy reprisals, intensifying their hunt for resistance members. It became clear to Nancy that her position was growing more dangerous with every successful mission. Despite the dangers, she understood that her role in the fight was only just beginning, and that her actions were making a real difference. The successful destruction of the bridge marked a pivotal moment in Nancy Wake's involvement with the resistance. It was not only a tactical victory, but also a moment of personal realization. She was committed to this cause, no matter the personal cost. Her growing notoriety within the resistance made her one of the most dangerous and hunted figures in Nazi-occupied France, but she remained steadfast in her mission. Her courage and quick thinking had already saved many lives, and she was becoming more than just a participant in the resistance. She was now an active leader, driving critical operations that disrupted the Nazi war machine. After the successful operation of destroying the bridge, Nancy Wake and her group became key players in the French resistance. As the stakes grew higher, so did the risks. Nancy quickly realized that her actions were becoming more dangerous, and the need for constant vigilance was crucial. The more effective their operations became, the more the Nazis ramped up their efforts to capture her. It was clear that she could no longer hide in one place for too long. Nancy's reputation among the Germans spread rapidly. Her ability to evade capture became legendary. The Nazis had given her the nickname the White Mouse, not only because of her ability to disappear from their grasp, but also because of her cunning and resourcefulness in avoiding traps. However, as her notoriety grew, so did the intensity of the German response. They began conducting frequent raids and searching for suspected resistance members with even more determination. Despite being one of the most wanted people in occupied France, Nancy was not deterred. She continued to play an active role in the resistance, but now the stakes were higher, and her life was in constant danger. The network of safe houses and underground routes that the resistance had set up were invaluable, but they also became more treacherous as the German forces increased their search efforts. Nancy had to keep moving constantly, relying on her quick thinking and the help of local sympathizers to stay one step ahead of the enemy. Her time spent hiding in the forests and villages became increasingly difficult. The Nazis had become experts at tracking down members of the resistance, and the constant threat of betrayal loomed over every operation. Yet, Nancy's resolve never faltered. She was determined to continue the fight, regardless of the personal cost. It was clear to her that every successful mission, every disrupted German supply line, brought the Allies one step closer to victory. Throughout this time, Nancy continued to act as both a leader and a mentor within the resistance. She trained new members, shared vital intelligence, and helped organize sabotage operations. Her leadership was invaluable, and she was quickly becoming one of the most respected and feared figures in the resistance. Despite the constant danger, she never hesitated to take risks, always putting the mission above her own safety. The stress of living in hiding, however, began to take its toll. The constant fear of discovery and the relentless pursuit by the Nazis left little room for rest. Yet, even in these conditions, Nancy remained focused on her objective, the liberation of France from Nazi occupation. Her courage and determination inspired those around her, and she continued to push forward, knowing that the end of the war was approaching, even if the road ahead was fraught with danger. When Nancy Wake realized that hiding and secrecy could no longer guarantee her safety, she decided to return to active combat, organizing more decisive operations against the Nazis. After the successful destruction of the munitions depot in May 1943, Nancy and her group were determined to continue their fight. She understood that in this situation, they needed to act with everything they had, using every opportunity the environment offered. France was fully embroiled in war, and each successful attack on the enemy was a significant contribution to the overall success. In June 1944, when Germany was already nearing defeat, the Allied invasion of Normandy began, marking a decisive turning point in the war. France was gradually being liberated from Nazi control, and the resistance played an increasingly important role in these events. Nancy Wake, despite the dangers, continued her work on the front lines, participating in the preparation for the liberation of France. Her work became even more critical with the start of Operation Overlord, the Allies landing in Normandy on the 6th of June 1944. The partisans, including Nancy, were ordered to assist the Allies, coordinate actions with them, and provide support during the liberation of France. In these conditions, Nancy was not just a member of the resistance, but an essential link in the chain of events that would lead to the liberation of her country. She was involved in organizing sabotage, as well as helping prepare civilians for the approaching liberation. But the struggle was still far from over. On the 12th of July, 1944, Nancy participated in one of the largest resistance operations. Her mission was to help the Allied forces seize a strategically important German airfield located in the southeastern part of France. This was a particularly risky step, as the Germans had heavily fortified such sites. But Nancy knew that destroying these vital points was crucial to weakening the enemy. The partisan group, led by Nancy, ambushed several key positions and destroyed large amounts of German equipment. They disrupted German operations significantly, reducing their ability to move reinforcements and supplies. The Allies, who were only a step away from the airfield, managed to complete the operation with minimal losses, thanks in part to the preparations Nancy and her team had made. After the operation was completed, Nancy and her group returned to the forests for safety. Although the mission had been a success, the dangers did not end. The Germans, already aware of the growing power of the resistance, began taking even harsher measures to suppress it. Despite this, Nancy's resolve remained unbroken. She understood that every attack, every sabotage operation, was bringing France closer to freedom. Nancy's role in these operations was growing ever more important. Her reputation as a fearless leader and an expert in organizing resistance activities spread throughout the ranks of the resistance. The war was still far from over, but her contributions had already made a lasting impact. She knew that she had to continue fighting, even though the risks were higher than ever before. Her actions were no longer just about individual victories, but about shaping the course of history. After the success of several operations, Nancy Wake and her group became an inseparable part of the French resistance. As the stakes grew higher, so did the dangers. Nancy quickly understood that her life was in constant jeopardy, and the search for her by the Nazis was becoming increasingly relentless. Her status as one of the most hunted figures in occupied France grew with every successful operation. She knew that her name was now synonymous with danger, not only for herself, but also for the people helping her. By this point, the Nazis had escalated their efforts to capture Nancy. Special units were assigned to track down the White Mouse, the nickname they had given her because of her incredible ability to slip through their fingers. Her reputation as a resourceful and elusive target only made the hunt for her even more intense. Despite the heightened danger, Nancy remained undeterred. She knew the risks, but her resolve to continue fighting was stronger than the fear of capture. The Nazi crackdown against the resistance became increasingly brutal, with whole villages being punished for helping partisans. Nancy's name was at the top of their list, and the threat of betrayal was ever present. Yet, she and her comrades continued their work, carrying out sabotage missions, gathering intelligence, and helping Allied agents. Every operation brought more danger, but Nancy's unwavering determination kept her moving forward. Despite the constant threats, Nancy continued to rely on her intelligence network and the support of local sympathizers. She often had to change her hiding places, moving from one location to another, always staying one step ahead of the enemy. The forests, abandoned buildings, and underground routes became her refuge, but they were also places of constant risk. The danger was omnipresent, and Nancy knew she couldn't afford to let her guard down for even a moment. By this time, Nancy had become a symbol of the resistance. Her legendary ability to evade capture, her bravery in leading operations, and her unwavering commitment to the cause made her a hero to the people of France. However, this same fame came with a heavy price. The more successful their actions were, the more the Nazis retaliated. In response to the growing resistance activity, German forces began setting up roadblocks, increasing patrols, and tightening their grip on the occupied territories. Despite the mounting danger, Nancy's actions grew bolder. She became one of the central figures in coordinating sabotage efforts, and her leadership skills were crucial in organizing increasingly daring missions. She understood that every attack against the Nazis, no matter how small, contributed to weakening their hold on France. Nancy's courage was remarkable, but it came at a cost. The constant movement, the ever-present threat of betrayal, and the knowledge that the Nazis were actively hunting her, wore on her. Yet, she remained focused on her mission, the liberation of France. Every step she took, every action she carried out, brought her country closer to freedom. Through all of the hardships and dangers, Nancy's resolve never wavered. She became an embodiment of the French resistance, a symbol of defiance and determination. The legend of the White Mouse was growing, and she would continue to inspire those who fought alongside her, never once considering surrender. With each passing month, the resistance in occupied France became more organized and determined. Nancy Wake continued her work, but her life was far from easy. She had witnessed countless losses and tragedies, and had become a part of a struggle that would forever change the course of history. Despite her pivotal role in the liberation of France, Nancy remained remarkably humble about her contributions. In the early post-war years, she sought to avoid the limelight, even as her achievements were recognized by both the Allies and the French authorities. Her name, the White Mouse, became well known not only within military circles, but also among ordinary citizens who were grateful for her role in the fight against the Nazis. Yet, Nancy never sought fame. For her, the most important task was the liberation of France and helping those who fought alongside her. Although she had been awarded many medals, including the Legion of Honor, she did not feel like a hero. She did what she had to do, and in the end, it was not about personal recognition, but about the freedom of her country. In the years following the war, Nancy continued to lead an active public life, but she shunned publicity and preferred to lead a quieter life away from the spotlight. However, her accomplishments were recognized on an international level. In 1947, she received the British Medal for Services in the fight against fascism, and in 1960, she was awarded the Order of the British Empire for her contributions during the war. In France, her name became synonymous with heroism, and her personal achievements were considered an essential part of the fight against the Nazi regime. However, Nancy Wake never fully escaped the trauma of the war. In the years following the conflict, she carried the scars of the hardships she had endured, but she never allowed them to break her spirit. Over the years, she continued to work for various charities, often helping veterans and their families. She was involved in numerous fundraising campaigns and initiatives to support those who had fought in the war. Nancy's work in the post-war years was also focused on ensuring that the memories of those who fought for France's freedom were not forgotten. She helped organize reunions and events for members of the resistance and their families, ensuring that the sacrifices of the past were honored and remembered. Despite her own personal pain, she never lost sight of the bigger picture, the fight for freedom, and the memory of those who had fallen in that fight. In 1997, Nancy Wake passed away, leaving behind a legacy that would live on forever. Her role in the liberation of France and her fight against Nazism had been monumental, and her name would forever be associated with courage, determination, and selflessness. Even in death, Nancy's example would inspire generations to come. Today, she is remembered as one of the greatest heroes of the Second World War, a symbol of the power of individual action in the face of overwhelming odds. After the end of World War II, Nancy Wake returned to normal life, but her path was far from easy. The impact of the war on her psyche and life was indelible. She had witnessed so much loss and suffering, and had become a witness to the tragedies that she endured while fighting against the Nazis. Despite her crucial role in the liberation of France, Nancy was surprisingly modest about her place in history. In the early post-war years, she preferred to avoid the spotlight, even though her efforts were recognized by the Allies and the French authorities. Her name, the White Mouse, became a symbol not only within the military community, but also among ordinary people who were grateful for her contributions to the fight against fascism. However, Nancy never sought glory. For her, the most important task was to liberate France and support those who fought alongside her. She had been awarded numerous honors, including the Legion of Honor, but her name remained largely unknown to the general public. What she had done was, in many ways, a personal victory, one that symbolized how a single courageous decision could alter the course of history. Even though her actions were hidden from most, their importance was undeniable. In the years following the war, Nancy Wake continued to live an active public life, but she avoided the media and preferred to stay out of the limelight. However, her efforts were acknowledged on an international level. In 1947, she was awarded the British Medal for Services in the fight against fascism, and in 1960, she received the Order of the British Empire for her wartime contributions. In France, her name became synonymous with heroism, and her personal achievements were celebrated as integral to the fight against the Nazi regime. Nevertheless, Nancy Wake never fully overcame the trauma caused by the war. The years after the conflict were marked by a sense of loss, and she carried the emotional scars of the hardships she had faced. However, despite these challenges, she never allowed herself to be broken. Over the years, she continued to help veterans and their families, and she was involved in many charitable efforts, supporting those who had fought for freedom. Nancy also worked tirelessly to ensure that the sacrifices of the resistance were not forgotten. She helped organize reunions and commemorative events for the men and women who fought in the resistance, ensuring that their bravery was honored. Even though she was carrying her own pain, Nancy remained focused on preserving the memory of those who had sacrificed their lives for the liberation of France. On the 7th of June, 1997, Nancy Wake passed away, leaving behind an extraordinary legacy. Her role in the liberation of France and her resistance against Nazism had been monumental, and her name would forever be linked to courage, determination, and selflessness. In death, Nancy's example would continue to inspire future generations. Today, she is remembered as one of the greatest heroes of World War II, a symbol of the power of individual action in the face of overwhelming odds. After the end of World War II, Nancy Wake's life took a quieter turn, but her role in history continued to grow in significance. As the world healed from the war, Nancy's name became synonymous with bravery, resilience, and an unwavering dedication to the cause of freedom. Her story was one of immense sacrifice, courage, and determination, and her contributions to the defeat of Nazi Germany could never be forgotten. Despite the dangers she faced, Nancy never hesitated in her mission. She had shown extraordinary courage, from organizing sabotage missions to aiding escape routes for Allied soldiers, and even personally taking part in operations that resulted in the deaths of Nazi soldiers. Yet, despite the numerous accolades she received, including the prestigious Legion of Honor and other awards, she always maintained that her actions were simply what needed to be done. In the post-war years, Nancy lived in relative obscurity compared to her legendary status during the war. She moved to different parts of the world, but she was always deeply connected to the cause she had fought for. She never sought fame, yet her story became a testament to what one person can do in the face of overwhelming adversity. Her recognition grew steadily over the years, especially as new generations learned about the incredible feats she had accomplished during the war. Her name was forever linked to the efforts of the French resistance, and she became a symbol of the fight against tyranny. Nancy continued to support various veterans organizations, helping those who had served alongside her, ensuring that the legacy of the resistance would not be forgotten. When Nancy passed away on the 7th of August 2011, she was remembered not just as a war hero, but as a symbol of the strength of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. Her story was one of survival, of fighting back against oppression, and of risking everything to ensure the future of freedom. She had faced dangers that would break most people, but she emerged as one of the strongest and most dedicated individuals of her time. Nancy Wake's legacy lives on as an inspiration to millions around the world. Her courage, leadership, and determination continue to inspire new generations to stand up against injustice. Her story is a reminder that even in the darkest times, one person can make a difference. She will forever be remembered as the White Mouse, a name that represents both her cunning ability to evade capture and the tremendous impact she had on the course of history. As long as people remember the sacrifices made during the Second World War, Nancy Wake's name will remain an enduring symbol of resistance, bravery, and the relentless fight for freedom.